Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media here in Seattle, Washington. And welcome to Conversations with Kate, a brand new recurring series, Volume 1. And this is an idea I've had for quite a long time, quite a few months. There have been times in the past where, just by purely coincidence, I've had multiple live streams with the same guest, but there's never any intention behind that. This is very, very intentional, having this recurring series start. So I'm very, very excited and very grateful to finally see this idea become a reality. And so it's going to be set up a little bit different than any of my live streams that I normally do. So if you're used to watching things, of course, some of the things are the same. You know, my backdrop's the same. I'm the same. But I will mention that if you're watching on the YouTube channel, please do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. My YouTube channel is thankfully starting to grow in a positive direction. So I'm happy about that. And if you happen to be on the Twitch side of things, that's always great if you follow me over there. You can ask questions of my guests at any time. They will go into the chat. Please be aware that I am the only one that sees those, so I will try to pepper those in if you have anything that you'd like to add during our conversation. And right now, again, because this is brand new, my guests and I are just trying things out to see how they go. Hopefully it'll be a once a month occurrence, and we'll kind of twist and tweak and do what we need to with this format to kind of get it to where we like it. And again, hopefully it's something that you enjoy. And it's so weird. I'm so used to like just certain things I just say off the top of my head because I've done, this is number 369 live streams I've done since 2020. It was May 22nd, if I remember the exact date. So I'm purposely trying to do something a little bit different because again, this is different and it's something again that I've had for a while. Somebody did ask me recently if I'm going to be doing more of these, like with a volume 2, volume 3. That would be next year. I don't have the bandwidth, honestly, to take on something. And I also want to make sure I'm giving this due justice. I want to make sure I'm doing this the way that I want to, and kind of see how it goes into next year, and then we'll kind of see where we're at that point. So instead of me reading my introduction, which I usually write out for each and every guest that I have when I do my live stream interviews, my guest is going to have a chance to talk about her background and everything else during the actual conversation. So what I can tell you is that I first met her and her co-director back in 2022, and I believe it was July, for a short film that they had done, which I to this day still love. It might be my favorite short film, to be honest. If not, it's definitely in the top 3. And then the last time she joined me via live stream was in March of 2023. So it's been a while. So I'm really looking forward to catching up. And we kind of have some other format things that we're going to be going through for the next up to an hour. And so I think the world of this lady. She is immensely talented and has so many artistic things that even I'm sure there's pieces that I'm not aware of. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kate Black Spence.
Mark, that was so sweet. Hello.
Oh, you're very welcome, and hello. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to do this and to be the first guest for the first time I've ever done something like this. So
This is fun. I'm so excited you reached out about it. It's a great idea, and here I am.
yeah, and I've got to say, I mean, every time that you've been on, it's not just me. I've had some people give me feedback, but I really love that one gal, and they're kind of like, well, I have to, well, especially for the last one, there's 3 of them. So I'm like, well, which one are you
You
talking about?
specific. I appreciate it. It's the Midwest charm. We can't turn it off.
And I remember too that the first one I did with you and John, that you stood, and nothing against John, John's great, but you stood out to me. And I remember you had to leave to do other things. So I'm kind of like, I really want her to stay if she can, but that's what we ended it like at 30 minutes. It was not like,
Mhm.
because John still had more time. And it's like, oh, well, I'd rather have both of you. So we're going to have to end it.
That's fair. Yep, that's true. I remember having to leave that one early. I felt bad about that. It was a great chat. We had a great time.
Yeah, and it just made me more a fan of Static Space after talking to both of you. And for folks that are out there, again, we're going to go through our backgrounds, in a minute here, but I still find it really kind of like what a weird small world this is. That, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we talked about this at that interview, that you guys were out here in Seattle for the Seattle International Film Festival, if I remember right. But I didn't know you guys at that point. I had not seen it yet.
Yeah, I think the film went out there. I didn't make it out. I don't know. I don't remember if John did or not, John Klein. But,
Okay.
but yeah, the film went out there. I mean, yeah, the film made it quite a little journey. So like that was really surprising and wonderful, and we were blessed.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes so. And again, we'll get into the introduction parts of things, but I just remember thinking, well, how weird is this that this film was playing here in my city, and then I didn't find out about it till maybe about 3 or 4 months later at a different festival that was virtual. So it's
That's
like,
right.
yeah, and it was one of the few times where my method of looking through film festival scheduling became, I just don't listen to the things with, oh, the top 10 hot films you need to watch. I just look through it myself and try to figure out what is something that's interesting to me, and that's how I ended up with Static Space.
I'm thrilled. I'm glad that's how it works for you. I feel like that's how most people sort of find their way to Static Space. I've gotten messages from people that are like, I don't even know how I found it. I'm just glad that I did. And I'm like, well, then there you go. That's all it needs to be.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how, it's just the fact that you got there.
Hmm.
So let's, since I keep mentioning introductions, why don't we kind of take a minute here for each of us to kind of go through our artistic backgrounds, or anything else that you'd like to share with the audience out there, and so they kind of know more about you. And so let's start with you, and then I'll tag team this on the second end of it.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Kate. I grew up in Indiana, and part of that very early on was me recognizing that I really wanted to be an actor. In preschool, my teachers observed that my favorite activity was dramatic play, and I think that's hilarious. They wrote that down on something, and my mom kept it forever, and I just never grew up from that, I guess. So I went to Ball State for chirp chirp for theater and film, and I went straight from there to Chicago. I always knew Chicago was sort of my speed. I love the theater community here. I love storefront theater. For those people who aren't familiar, storefront theater is actually a lot like film acting, where it's very small houses. So sometimes it's about 50 seats, sometimes it's less. Some theaters are more, obviously. We have all of the sizes, but my preference is storefront, and that really started here in Chicago. So there's a really strong, um, there's a strong contingent of storefront theaters here. So for the first decade of my time in Chicago, I was exclusively an actor. And then somewhere around 2019, someone reached out to me to 2019. I collaborated on a play, and it was very devised theater, meaning that everybody got to write their own bits and sort of come together and try to create this thing. I don't know that the play was very successful in what it was trying to do, but I owe it so much because it taught me that I really loved writing. So then 2019, a friend approached me and was like, I have this idea for a play, but I think I need to have a woman attached to write it with me. And so he and I chatted about it. We ended up co-writing it. Then I discovered I was a writer sort of from that process, and having really strong opinions about writing, which I don't think I realized I'd had. And so then I started writing, and then pandemic happened. I felt silenced right when I was just starting to realize I was a writer, and I didn't know what to do with that. And then John Klein came into my life, who, he'd been in my life for a long time, but he was the one that read something that I'd written and was like, we should film this, and we should film this right now. So I wrote that as a short film called Static Space, and yada, yada, yada. I've been writing, directing, and acting sort of since. I'm a SAG-AFTRA member, and I now teach at Paramount Theater. I teach film acting. And that's pretty much everything, I think.
Okay, that's wonderful. I've actually never heard of the term of a storefront theater.
They're pretty cool. I mean, it's not for all audiences. I think genuinely some audiences feel a little too involved, invested. There's no place to hide in a storefront theater. So a lot of times we, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what the term was for the early storefront theater. There was like oh, I'm not going to remember it. I wish that I did, but there's like a term for like this, like Chicago, like in your face theater. And then things sort of died down a bit from that, but the storefront really remained. I still maintain that if you have a chance to see anything storefront theater that you could also see in a large theater, you should absolutely see it in both because it's completely different experiences.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I'll have to kind of keep an eye out for this in my local area.
Mhm.
And because I'm thinking like some of the shows I've seen that would be considered, on that kind of smaller scale would be like maybe 30 or 40 people were there. And the space was small. So like you said, you can't hide anywhere. I mean, they
Mm-mm.
can see everybody that's there in the audience. And
Yep.
sometimes they use that to their advantage.
Yes. Yes, that's the key, right? Like I think as an actor, all actors, I think regardless of film or proscenium stage or storefront, I think all actors really thrive off of that energy that they get from their audience, whether it's just the director behind the camera or whatever it might be. And man, when it's a small house, you can hear every gasp, you can hear everything, and it feeds my soul. It's my favorite.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, the closest thing for me when I'm not an audience member would have been, as I think I mentioned pre-show, I used to play music in a duo around town. And so we were always playing small, coffee houses, breweries, things of that nature. And so I used to start actually in the crowd playing a guitar thing. And
Oh,
so
fun.
I'd kind of walk through the crowd until I got to the front stage, or if we had a stage to play on. Usually we're just over in the corner on the floor. But it kind of got people's attention right away that there's this person around me. And some people don't like it. They don't
They
like me
don't.
being so close.
Yeah.
Um, they're invading their personal space, and they're just there to kind of hang out and talk to their friend or whatever. And then there's this person right next to them.
Sometimes people are really good audience members and they lean into that. And sometimes they really don't. And you can tell right away the show starts and it's cross-armed, leaned all the way back, usually like, I don't think they realize what their face is telling us, but their face is telling us that they don't want to be there. And so our goal, we're always in the dressing room being like, that guy in the third row, like you saw him, right? Like we try so hard to be like, I made him laugh. We have those moments.
That sounds similar to at least the mentality that I used to have with my singers. Like there'd be somebody there doing the whole thing. Maybe they like certain types of music that we're not playing, but then
Yep.
they don't realize that I have a wide breadth of music, stuff in my background. So like I know a riff from that band that's on your T-shirt. So in
Oh,
between
nice.
in between songs, I'll just pull that thing out, and then it'll immediately get their attention. Like, wait a minute, you're playing that
That is
doesn't
clever.
jive. Yeah. So it's kind of like, yeah, reading the room for sure and saying,
Yeah.
let's try to convert some people here.
Yes. Well, I think that's so much of it. I mean, I think about especially when I was in high school or middle school and we were being like bused to different shows for like field trips. And I remember, I mean, half those kids didn't want to be there. They were just happy they weren't in school. And I was always the one that was like, I wanted to show the actors how much I appreciated what they were doing. I was leaned fully in. I was nodding really vigorously. Like I was trying so hard to be like, you see that I love what you're doing. It's fun. But I also think now that I've been a performer, like the people like me who were leaned in and actively giving me engagement, that's not my favorite audience. My favorite audience members are the ones that are leaned back. That if I do my job really well and honestly, and I'm not forcing anything, they just start leaning in without realizing it. It's my jam.
I like that. I've talked many times on my live stream interviews about that. I've had people and in some cases businesses reach out to me about we'd like to get involved, but this is what we want you to change. And for me, I'm like, no, I'm happy. I'm just going to stay my course, and the audience will eventually come to me. That's just been my mentality because I don't have to do this. I don't have to do any of these things. I'm choosing because I love it.
Yeah.
So if you're on board with what I'm doing, great. I love it. I want more of you. But if you want me to change what I'm doing to fit whatever your narrative is, I'm not with it. So find somebody else. I don't care. I don't care if you offer sponsorship, money, other things in my face.
It's impressive and it's hard. That's hard to be that confident. It's hard to like move through, especially in this industry, to feel that certain of yourself. So good for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And trust me, it's tough, especially when I need money.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, part of me is always thinking, are you an idiot? What are you doing turning this
You're
down?
not.
It's like, no, I need to be able to live with myself. And again, this is my thing. I have to listen to other people at my day jobs and things in the past where I'm the boss here.
Yes.
So
Yes.
why, I'm not going to sit there and just try to, again, appease people because they think I should or shouldn't be doing certain things to make my channel or my outlet more popular, more views, more everything, more social media following. It's like, I'm fine. Trust me, I'm fine.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, there's a term that I think gets thrown around as though it's a negative thing or it implies some sort of diva status, but I think artistic integrity is real. And I think the only people who know what our voice is and what it can be is the artists themselves. And so staying true to that is literally all we can do.
yeah, and having chances to talk to someone like yourself and many of the other wonderful guests I've had over the last 4 years virtually, um, it's nice to hear some of these things that just kind of reiterate in my own head, like, this is how artists think. It's not just you, and that yeah, if you're trying to maintain that integrity, there's some tough choices that have to be made, but they're usually the right ones. If you make them certain, if you stay the course,
Yes.
then you'll make the right choices, and you'll be able to basically live with the artistic things that you're doing. But yeah, it's not necessarily easy.
I don't think it ever should be.
Absolutely. And so, I guess speaking of this thing, so thank you for introducing yourself and your background. And as we do these live streams, I'm sure more things are going to coming out of the woodwork for both of us. And so, for myself, for people that aren't familiar with me, Eclectic Arts started back in 2011 as a fanzine. So it was three hard copy issues that I did during that time. It was focused in on music, but even back then, I knew that I like all kinds of things. So even musically, I didn't just make it all about like hard rock and metal and stuff that I'm known for. I had a wide variety of people in that. I was into craft beer at the time, so I had a brewery that I interviewed for the first issue, and so that was just really fun. And I had no idea it would turn into what it's like now in 2024. It was not. I'll try to make this concise. It was basically something that started from an email exchange with a band member that I knew 10 years previously. His band had stopped doing music, based out of the Czech Republic of all places. They put out a new record. I got a hold of him again. We were doing this email exchange talking about the record and everything that's been going on in the last 10 years. And that's when I was like, I think other fans would like to read this. And so that's where the whole thing came up of doing the fanzine. I had just seen a wonderful singer-songwriter named Vienna Tang live here in Seattle. So I was saying, well, if I did this thing in my head, which I still do this to this day, I'm kind of like, if there's no gatekeepers, if I could interview somebody, who would I want to interview? And she was one of them. So I'm like, well, how do I get a hold of her? So I started digging around and all this kind of stuff happened. Long story short, I got to do a phone interview with her, which was the very first phone interview I ever did. I just saw her about 3 Saturdays ago here in Seattle live. So it's nice to catch up because we have this lineage through Eclectic Arts, whether she knows it or not. We've done other interviews, but I don't think she realized like how important she was at the time to be this foundational piece to what I eventually started doing. Around 2015, I did my first video interview on a tour bus, and that was educational. I didn't understand how all these ins and outs works and being on guest lists and getting photo passes and knowing who the publicist is and managers, and I didn't know any of this kind of stuff. And so I overthought it like I always do, just to make sure I was at the venue like way too early. I had my friend with me that was going to be my assistant, so we're talking about what we're going to ask during the interview. And by the time the interview happened, which was like at 9:15 at night, I was like shot. I was already like spent. Like I had no energy, nothing left. I'd worked myself up into a tizzy basically, and then it was like, oh no, what am I going to do now? And then the tour manager said, okay, you got 5 minutes or whatever. Get on the bus. That is on my YouTube channel. That interview. I can't bring my. Here's a little side to that. I have not watched that interview in full since I did it. I can't bring myself to watch it. I'll watch the first maybe 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. I don't want to watch the rest of this thing.
Yep. That makes sense. I have a few of those early on that I'm like, I never ever need to see that there was evidence that I'm sure I was as bad as I remember being.
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt after I did this. I thought it was amazing that I got a chance to talk to him. Oh man. And then the tour manager was nice enough to say, you know, how many people were you like on the guest list? You know, you and your assistant, is anybody else? I'm like, I was just planning on paying at the door just as a fan. I didn't know I could be on a guest list. How does this work? And she said, oh no, Mark, we'll just put you on the guest list. We'll put, you know, plus one, plus two, however many you want. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice of you.
That's
this is
awesome.
this is kind of cool. And then I do have a photography background, but not with concerts or anything of that sort. But through doing these in 2015, 2016, sometimes the powers that be were asking, "Would you like to shoot the show?" And I'm like, I don't know how to shoot a concert. I mean, especially like heavy metal ones, they're dark and they're backlit and there's smoke and they're moving around and they're doing this and I'm like, this is going to be really, really challenging. But then there's a piece of me that's kind of been there all this time that I'm like, well, yeah, Mark, it is a challenge. Why don't you accept it and see what you can do?
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll have a photo pass. And I remember I stuck it on me. Most people, if you're in the photo pits or in front of the house, you wear something like a lanyard around your neck and you stick it in there so you can just take it out. But at the time, I didn't know about this stuff. So I'm just walking around like a dweeb with this thing stuck on me. Took some horrible shots, as we were just talking about 2 minutes ago. I don't ever plan on letting people see, though.
But like, I mean, there's no artist that isn't ashamed of, I think, where they might have started. And shame is even still a wrong word. Like we learned so much from that. I can't imagine not having those moments. We need those to be exactly who we are. However, it doesn't mean everybody else needs to see them.
Very, very true. I've said it many times that everyone starts somewhere, and I just, yeah, it's like, oh man, some of those pictures. But Eclectic Arts really shifted in a large way in 2018. It was May of 2018. Still wanted to do an interview. I was not looking to get into what I consider the art side of what I do, but there is a national musical was coming to town, and I'm not, especially at that time, I was not a fan of musicals. I'd seen maybe three.
Oh,
But
wow.
I thought it'd be really interesting to interview one of the leads from this musical. So there's that piece in my brain again, like I would really like to talk to so and so, and that's been there since the get go. And I won't get into this because I kind of mentioned it during other live streams, but that process was it almost sent me the other way because of the person that was the gatekeeper was so awful and so terrible to me. I'm like, who is this woman and how she's replying to me via email? And I'm like, I'm being very professional, very nice, very attentive to what I say, and she was just like reaming me out basically. But I'm like, how bad do I want this? Do I really want this interview, or should I just move on to the next thing? And there's that piece of me that's like, I want this interview, so I'm going to sit down. I'm going to put up with this crap and see if I can actually make it happen. Not out of spite, but just to see if I can make it happen. And it did. I managed to get in there and talk to this lead. I was one of two outlets. The other one was the ABC affiliate here in Seattle. Was the other, affiliate. So I felt pretty nervous standing outside the building when they showed up in their van. I'm like,
I bet.
and yeah, and I never, I didn't have a musical background. I prepared myself, but I mean, not to where I am at now. I feel much more comfortable talking to somebody. And again, I'll try to make this as short as I can. But that reporter was one of the rudest people, which was really unfortunate. She probably looked down on me because I'm this freelance person that she's never seen before, and she just did 8 other stories around town. So here's another story she's got to do, bang it out in 10 minutes, and then be on the road to go to the next thing. But I just don't believe in that. There's got to be a level of courtesy and respect, especially if that's how I'm treating you.
Mhm.
Um, and I've talked about this before too, where we're in this room up in this theater. The guest was awesome. She was amazing. I was so glad I stuck with it to try to interview her. But this news team, and at the time I understand they asked me to step outside into the hallway so that I don't make noise or interrupt their recording. And I said, okay, I get it. But it was the way she said it, kind of like, you need to go out there. And I'm kind of like, who the fuck are you talking to?
Yep.
But okay, no problem. I'll go right out there. So they did their piece with her, and then the camera guys taking all the stuff down, and then I went to her and politely said, "Please leave the room while I do mine."
Good for you.
And the look on her face.
That. Oh
but
man.
but she did it, and here's the rub to this is that she could not go down the elevator with her cameraman because our contact, our communications director, had the like passcode, so we all had to go back down together in this elevator. So she had to wait out there in the elevator, and I had to do my thing. And then all of us went back downstairs. So talk about awkward.
That's, that feels like justice, though. That's great.
Yeah, well, yeah, when I tell that story now, I'm kind of, yeah, I'm really glad that I didn't let her walk all over me, because I easily could have. I'm so new to everything.
Of course.
But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not letting you treat me like that. I don't care if fuck who you are.
Good for you.
So from there, it became so the Broadway at the Paramount shows are the North American musicals that tour basically. So like Wicked's here next month, and Back to the Future, and I think Hamilton's coming back and all that kind of thing. So I review those shows. I review things at the Seattle Opera, at the Pacific Northwest Ballet, many theater companies from the Fifth Avenue Theater, Village Theater, Phoenix, Edmonds, ACT. There's a bunch of them that I'm credentialed with. And then the pandemic hit. So then it became, well, just like everybody else, what am I going to do now? And I was very, very fortunate that one of the bands I interviewed back in 2017 was going on a virtual tour. And so they asked me about doing these live stream interviews, Mark, for 30 minutes to open up our shows. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Cool.
I said, I don't know if I have the right gear. My laptop at the time was dying on me. And I said, I have this phone. And talked to their tech person, which was the guitarist. And he said, oh, yeah, no, Mark, that'll work fine if you got an iPhone, all this kind of stuff. And so I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this right now. I'm not in the best headspace. But again, what else am I doing? And this is like a really good, and they're an amazing band. They're called Alice from Los Angeles. And I'm so glad that some part of me decided to say, you know what, just say yes. Just say yes. Stop overthinking it and say yes. We did, 59 shows on that tour. So I did 59 live streams. I ended up looking into how to do my own live streams, which obviously I've continued to this day. Organically, I started reviewing films during the pandemic. Another thing, I was not looking to do it, but a film that I had seen, I met the creators here at a local horror convention. Their follow-up came out during the pandemic, and it was like 5 years late or something. And so I saw it. I reached out to them and said, hey, look, I've been reviewing musicals. I've been reviewing theater. I've been reviewing all this stuff. And they said, oh, Mark, yeah, we remember you. That'd be awesome if you want to review our film. I'll get you in touch with the person that will get you a screener. And I wrote the review of that. And just by pure luck, an actor that was in that film read my review. He reached out directly to me and said, hey, Mark, I read your review and I really enjoyed it. I directed a film back in 2018. Are you interested in checking it out? I'm like, what else do I have to do? Yeah, absolutely. Send it my way. And he and I had an interesting dialogue. I give him all the credit in the world because I hated that film. I thought it was terrible. And I felt so bad because I'm like, how do I tell him I don't think anything's redeeming in this film at all, which says a lot. I can usually find something, but this film is not bad. It just wasn't working for me. And I was honest to have that dialogue with him. And he was extremely professional. He said, no, this isn't going to work for everybody. So I would love to hear your feedback and get some constructive criticism. And so I was kind of telling him stuff back and forth. And I said, I don't really feel good about publishing my review. I'm not trying to hurt you. I know you're an independent filmmaker. If it goes on, someone picks it up and it goes on Amazon or on Google Reviews or something somewhere, and it hurts you getting funding for your next project or whatever. So, and he actually came back and told me, he's like, no, go ahead and put it up. But in that time, which was like maybe 6 hours, I already made the decision, I'm not going to do it. So he wanted me to put it up, and I said no. So that's where I felt okay with that in terms of like artistically. People kind of have come back at me about, well, if you have artistic integrity, then you should have stood behind your words. I'm like, I do, but I also understand the bigger picture here, and I'm not trying to hurt it. So
Right.
I still feel good about it to this day. But I have this thing where I'll have an opportunity, somehow it falls in my lap, and I'll just massage the hell out of it. So that's how I started doing other films, film festivals. And then once we started getting to like, late 2021, those two worlds collided for me. The stuff I learned to do with the pandemic, which was live streams and film reviews, and then the stuff pre-pandemic, all the in-person stuff, they all came together, and it was too much. I was like, how am I can't, I'm one person. I can't do all this stuff as much as I'd like to. I gave it a good college try. I was trying to be every theater opening night and every, you know, interview opportunity and every band to go be in the photo pit and shoot their show and all. And it was just too much. So in the last couple of years, as I mentioned, Kate pre-show, I've had to dial back. I've had to dial back quite a bit in my mind. To the average person, it's like, no, you're still doing a lot. But I'm like, no, I'm not. That was a lot over there in 2021 or 2022. But I'm slowly kind of getting used to the fact that this is what's the right balance for me. And so I'm extremely grateful for every opportunity I have, will have. I still can't believe in my mind in many cases that I do what I'm doing now. If you had told me back in 2010 into 2011 that I would be doing this, I'd be like, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? Interviewing actors and doing live streams and, you know, being in a photo pit. And I'm like, no, I'm just this goofy, dorky fan of artistic stuff.
I think that's what makes it the most fun, though. I think anything in, like, I don't know, media, film, whatever, like this whole term is for this industry that like we share. I think part of what makes it so fun is that it is completely unpredictable. I think we can have strong ideas that we really hold on to, like our 5-year plan, where we see ourselves in 5 years. But I think what makes it so interesting is that almost always gets annihilated pretty quickly because something else you didn't expect comes along, something that didn't exist 2 years ago comes along. This industry is always changing. Its needs are changing. And like we as artists are developing. And I never would have thought that I ever would be a director. I thought that was one of the most thankless and difficult jobs. I still kind of do, but I didn't know that I also had a really strong idea of what stories should look like and should be. And the fact that I had that and still have it means that, yeah, directing is a great option for me. And so is writing. And so is not just holding on so tightly to, I want to be an actor, but also I want to tell stories.
It's very well said. And you're right. It's so interesting that these opportunities come up. I mean, I don't know. Somebody asked me now, what are you going to be doing next year? I don't know. There might be something different that comes along that really kind of captures my attention and I want to spend some time with. Or in many cases, like I just went to a local theater for the very first time on Saturday. So I've known about them, but I just never got a chance to get out there. So it's really fun to go see something new,
Yeah.
and kind of be in that local artist scene and see, you know, what do they have going on here at this particular company. But I don't know. Somebody said, you know, Mark, you're going to be really involved with art museums or something in Seattle. I'm like, no, I'm not. I can't say that now because maybe it'll actually happen.
Absolutely.
Or I don't know, some weird way I'm on stage somewhere again. So
The thing I've learned is to stop saying never, because every single time I've ever said it, I've come to regret it. So
that's good advice. I need to take that advice. Just like, you know what, just kind of see how things happen, you know. And when the opportunities are there, and this is something that I've been really big about talking to other guests about during the live streams and in person too, is that I think opportunities come along a lot of the time to almost everybody. Whether you act on that is the whole difference. So I've had people ask, especially around 2020, I was getting all these DMs about how did I start my stuff. And I said, okay, I'll kind of tell you how it started, and I'll get all long-winded and ramble and all this kind of stuff. But I've always told them that when I saw there was an opportunity, I would sit there and massage it like crazy,
Yeah.
and see what happens with it. It wasn't just me getting this opportunity. I did it, and then it just went away. I said, well, no, let me kind of sit there and see. So like when I was talking about reviewing the first 2 films, they came from the same distributor. So I reached out to them, the distribution company, and said, hey, I just reviewed these 2 films. Do you happen to have anything else? And they sent me something immediately, which was for a different film company. And so I watched that. I think it was called Union Bridge. I still remember the name of the film. And then so I reached out to that film company and said, hey, I just reviewed this. What else do you have? And it just kind of snowballed from there. But it took work. It took work on my end. There's no way in hell the Seattle Opera would have credentialed me to review any of their productions had I not had other things to build up to it, to give them examples. Here's an example of my writing. And one thing I've definitely learned from every PR person and every communications director, if they're not schooled in terms of college in writing or communications, they definitely spend a hell of a lot of time doing it. So they know good writing. They know it when they see it, versus like, I might have a music PR person that's never taken, you know, photos from a photo pit. They don't really know. They can only tell, like, when they see a photo, I like that picture, but they can't tell you why, and they can't tell you how to take it.
Mm-hmm.
But writing, I them know. And one of them, he was for this. I have no problem saying for the Pacific Northwest Ballet. He's one of my favorite communications directors because he's actually gone through my writing, and if I put a question kind of out to the audience in my review, he will answer it for me directly.
Oh, I
He
love
will.
that.
He will tell me all the background about what was going on and blah blah blah. And he will also let me know if I have some errors in my writing. But that's how
Good.
I get. That's how I get better.
Yeah.
I told him I want to know these things. I don't want to keep putting out subpar garbage. I want to get better, and so I can only get better if I have someone who's like you, who I really respect. That you can kind of tell me in a polite way, hey, you need to look at this paragraph here. That's a little wonky.
I
um,
think that's also, I think, as I don't know, all the hats that I wear, I think being an actor first was really important for me because part of that is just getting rejection repeatedly, just always rejected and not taking it personally because that's just so much of what this world is. And then once you finally get a yes, it comes with so many notes and so much directorial feedback about what's not working. And you have to keep channeling and changing and adjusting and finding that perfect little middle ground for this character. All of that, I think, is so necessary to wear every other hat that I've worn and that I will eventually wear. I think starting as an actor is it's a great building block for me.
that's such an interesting part of. I know I came up in one of the live streams where we had, I think, at least two actors that were involved with this group discussion, and they're talking about rejection, and that some of them kind of learned how to deal with it as best they can, and other ones to this day still have a huge problem trying to, especially if they feel like they're trying for many different things, many different parts, and not even one of them's a callback, and
Yeah.
they're like, it gets so frustrating and so demoralizing. So like trying to learn how to almost separate, you know, your worth from that was
It
so hard.
it's still, I mean, yeah, it can still be some of the hardest part. I think, especially as I took sort of a few years away. I have a 2.5-year-old now, and he's amazing. But part of that was sort of definitely stepping back from theater altogether because theater, 8 weeks of rehearsal, 6 weeks of a run, it was just way too much to manage with a baby and now a toddler. But with film, I would still do it periodically. I'd still audition for small things, for little pieces. And it made the rejection feel 3 times harder, I think, than it had been before, because every rejection would come with then, another month before another audition would pop up. And that was really hard for me. I think I'm on the other side of that now, which is nice. But I mean, of course, the rejections are still aplenty.
And saying this is, and like what you just said, from on the media side, some people don't realize, like, if I'm trying to secure, let's say, 4 live stream interviews in the next month or two, sometimes those 4 completely collapse on me, and so I get, to me, that's my form of rejection in the sense that they didn't happen, they're not on the schedule, and if I get a 5th one, then I get a 6th one. It's like, and the first one doesn't realize what's going on, but I realize, like, damn, I mean, when is one of these going to kind of finally happen? In some cases I completely 100% understand why they fell apart, and other times there's things that maybe could have been fixed or let me kind of been communicated to me earlier on in the process, but it happens. And same thing with getting approved for concerts. Like, I'm supposed to work one tomorrow night, and sometimes you don't find out till the day of the show if you're approved. So it's like,
That's right.
I'm not putting my life on hold for that. So I always have to tell people I'm a 24-hour person minimum. I need to know ahead of time.
Man, that is very real. And I didn't know that was the case for you and probably for lots of other people in lots of other sort of gig industries. It's relatable. The way it works here, if it's some sort of a commercial, a lot of times there's the audition, there's the callback, then there's check avail, which means they're just making sure that date is still held open. And then there's getting cast. And at one point I was on check avail for 3 or 4 different projects simultaneously, all at the same time. And not a single one of those ever evolved into anything. And that was this year. And that was really hard because once you make it to check avail, it feels like it's a sure thing. Most of the time it is. And it's such highs and lows. You celebrate the check avail because at least it means that they liked you. At least it means that, like, the work that you put into the audition and the callback hasn't gone completely unnoticed. And then to get nothing from it, that's great, but it didn't pay a single bill. You know what I mean? In the end, that's such a hard part of it. This is my first year of being in SAG, and I wasn't planning on saying this because it feels very vulnerable. This is my first year being in SAG-AFTRA where have not made a single dollar from my work this year. And that's really hard. Like even when I had my baby, I was still working. So that's been challenging, but also I was in Checkaville for 4 projects at the same time. I've been on Checkaville for other projects this year. I know I'm making it far in the process. I know that people in the room, I know that they know me. I know that they like what I'm doing. It's just for 1,000 reasons, I don't book the project. So sometimes in one of the commercials case, I know that it was canceled. The whole idea was scrapped. And I know in others, I'm sure they went with somebody else. So it is what it is. This industry is wild and it's hard to predict. And I know that also you wanted to make a Hard Out here in like 15 minutes, and we haven't even talked about the short film yet. So I don't want to like.
We'll get to it.
Good. I just want to make sure that I'm not monopolizing.
No, you're good. And I know I've definitely been talking a lot more than I normally do during these things.
That's part of it, though, right? We're both supposed to be in this.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. That is the point of this, and I can say that before we get to the short film that when I first started reaching out and sending emails out to people back in 2011 to try to get interviews, I would hear a whole lot of nothing. It's just like trying to get a new job, and you might send out 50 resumes and you don't hear anything back. And I still remember getting excited when I got a no.
Yes. Yeah, it had to matter enough to get the no. So I get that too.
Yep. They actually sent, they took the time to say, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, that's better than not hearing anything at all. So I'm gonna step up now. Now I just have to get to the point where they actually want to like find more about what I want to talk to their client, and then eventually get that yes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's been, even especially this year, there's been probably in the last 2 months, certain things that were supposed to happen and they just went down the toilet.
It happens that way. It just does. And I feel like you have slow years and then you have everything is a big bang the following year. It's hard to know. Staying the course is really all you can do.
Yep. And that's why, as we were talking earlier, I mean, really not only just with believing in yourself and trying to keep your integrity together, but it's a hard balance when you have a lot of this stuff pulling you the other way, and not trying to become a negative Nelly and trying to get into that realm, because that's not going to help you at all. But you need to at least acknowledge those feelings for a little bit and then go back over this way.
Yeah,
for sure. That's real. Okay, and as Kate said, let's get to this next thing. And again, for folks, this is a work in progress. This is our first inaugural episode of this. So here we go. All right, here we are with Kate's Corner, and this is actually, maybe Kate, you can speak about this, because as we were kind of having a dialogue back and forth to set this whole thing up, you came up with this idea.
Yeah, originally I think you had pitched, just bringing me on and chatting about where I am as an artist, what's going on, what's coming up, all of that. And I think my response was, that sounds fun, but I don't know that anyone will find what I'm doing interesting enough to like maintain the viewership. But I was like, well, what I think would also be interesting is if there's like a short film that we could watch and then we could discuss it together afterwards and sort of break it down of what I see with my industry eye and what you see with yours, and how we feel about it, and hopefully drive up, any sort of buzz for it and go from there.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. And so I've been really fortunate that I have a particular company that sends me short films from time to time to either do interviews with or check out. And so the film that Kate and I took a look at, let me make sure I put this up right. It's called Picture Day. And so there's the one sheet of the poster for it, and here's a little slide from it as well. And make sure I get the information right. This was written and directed by Kelly Pike, and it is now qualified as a 2025 Academy Award short film after it won numerous awards at Palm Springs International Film Festival and the Warsaw Film Festival, among many others. So we got a chance to check this out individually. As I mentioned to Kate, when I sent it to her, I had not seen it yet, so I was completely going in blind instead of something that I've maybe seen once or a few times or something like that. So, Kate, I'll turn the floor over to you. What are your impressions and thoughts about this film?
I was so delighted. One of my favorite things about short films, short stories, anything that's like of like the brief narrative, I love simplicity. And this had such graceful beauty in its simplicity. It let the story be without forcing or prodding. So much of the story happens in silence. I find that to be really brave and sometimes really meaningful. It feels like in those moments you get a lot of like this Rorschach test for audience members of like, what do you think is happening in this moment? This very quiet moment. What do you see in your character that like you're identifying with or that's resonating with you? And it's fun because as an audience member, you get to bring so much to it without realizing you're bringing so much of yourself to it. And that's the exact reason why so many directors don't like those moments because they want to tell you what to think. And this story just it it was beautiful. It resonated and it hurt me in like really lovely ways. It felt beautiful and I wanted to hug the main character just the whole time.
Wow. Okay.
You- Did you not take that away from
No.
it?
I think what I can say from from my outside perspective as someone who critiques and does that. I don't like that word critic, but I guess that's what I am. Um, that I liked it. I immediately got pulled into that character because, and I don't have a relationship to being in a military family or having to bounce around to different schools and all that kind of thing. But I definitely have a relationship to feeling like I'm the outsider. Back to my school days, and even as an adult in certain circles, where I feel,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I definitely related to the character in that way. The character for folks that are watching is Asian American, and so it's kind of interesting in a general sense. It felt like this was almost like the director putting all these different pieces together of like what she wants to do as a feature length film because there's so many things that are there that could be developed.
Yes.
Um, and I'm sure that's part of the struggle for anyone that makes short films that maybe that is what they want to do, but here's the reality. I can do this with what I have in my hands and hope to God someone picks up on it and wants to do something with it. And other times you can tell the story is told in that short film. There isn't not anything else to add to it. Um, but I thought that the director, and just especially since he wrote it, introduced so many different themes within 15 minutes. It was kind of remarkable how many different themes came up with gender identity and the
Yes.
patriarchal setup with the family, and you have interracial identity things going on with the mom and dad, and then siblings, and just there's so much stuff going on in this. But like you said, it was presented in such a simplistic way
Yes.
that it didn't like overwhelm you
Mhm.
at all. And I think that's why I got sucked into it. I'm like, so what's going to happen? And then ends with the picture day of her getting her school pictures taken, and which is a whole other thing that I think a lot of people could relate to. Just that whole process of like a lot of people don't like having their picture taken. Period. Let alone this
Yeah.
whole thing that's going on.
Well, and I think for me, watching it as a woman, like that moment at the end where you're hearing the photographer, there's so many times that I guess twice, I think, that stand out to me where we hear the voice of someone with authority, but we don't see them. And I think that's always really interesting. We don't see this photographer, but we hear them saying, okay, like smile. Now this time try your most beautiful smile, right? I think and she doesn't. And that it said so much. And like as a woman, the idea of like present yourself more beautifully by smiling is certainly not lost on me. And I can feel that deep in my bones. I think my only criticism is that that last moment in the picture day, space, that it was so meaningful and so powerful. Everything she had been through, her sitting there being told to smile. And I think what I didn't need was the one moment that I felt like went away from the simplicity of the story, which was the butterflies at the very end. Spoiler. It was the one moment where I'm like, oh, you already did it. You've already achieved this metaphor in a way that we don't need this. That was the only thing that as I was watching, I was like, oh, so close to being to fully just, it felt like it undermined everything that it had been before that to me.
Yeah, you said it much better than I could, because I was going to mention that scene. It seemed like an add-on to me. Like
Yes.
you definitely didn't need it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, like, as a photographer, when I used to work with models, sometimes you'd have somebody that was so heavy-handed with the props around on the set of what you're trying to shoot. And it's like, you don't need all that to tell the picture story. And same thing with this film, that yeah, you had this nice pace going along with it, and I understand what you're saying. I'm getting everything that you're trying to, get me to absorb. And then that happened, and it was just like, just edit that out.
Yes. Yeah, it reminded me. Oh, I would get so much criticism for it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Everyone loves Inception. It's a brilliant movie, and I still think the end was a cop out. But I feel like the way that it was edited told us ultimately whether it was, reality or whether it was fake. To me, it was edited in a way that felt like they were just like, well, we should leave it with the question. Let's just cut it short and not show it falling down. And I'm not bringing my Incept. Everyone's going to come for me for not liking that ending, which everyone else has decided was like the greatest ending of all time. But I was frustrated because I felt like it was such a similar. It was so close to just trusting everything that it was. And they were like, "Oh, you don't be really artsy." And I'm like, "No, don't do it. Just let it be the story." I was so invested in the mother relationship. I thought that was handled so well. I wanted to smack her around, that mother, and I also wanted to hug her too, because I so felt for her and the impossibility of parenting sometimes, and obviously the marriage that she was in. I was very invested in this short film, and I think that's a testament to everything that these filmmakers are.
Yeah, see, and that makes two of us. So in the case that we started with this first short film that we both were invested in, it was resonating with both of us, says a lot.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I've seen films and, things in person and production wise, that I'm like, this isn't, that's not connecting with me. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily a bad production. There's just something about the source material that I'm like, when is this going to get going? When am I going to start feeling for these characters? I really want to, but I don't give a shit right now.
And there are lots of them, and especially right now where I feel like sometimes there is a respect for slow burn stories, but also a desire to get really heavy handed with the slow burn nature, where I think it makes you feel either stupid or bored and sometimes in the way that they really linger, these 6-hour cuts of movies sometimes. But I thought, I was like, I knew I was going to be invested, and I knew it was going to be a well-told story when it, like, the opening visuals of it, right? Of like, all we see is her on the ground next to a bike that looks like it's fallen over. And instead of dwelling on this bike accident, the action of what looks like maybe she like fell over on this bike, it just starts from that place. It lets us tell that story. And then we see the collateral damage of this butterfly that looks like she crushed. And it's like, automatically, the idea of collateral damage and her being hand in hand as she walks into a classroom for the first time, I nerded out. I'll nerd out about this short film. Other than that last moment, there was so much tight storytelling here. I would love to interview the filmmakers.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I only did a little bit of investigating into the director's background. I know she's done at least 3 or 4 other short films that she
Wow.
has available. And I watched like only like 2 minutes of an interview, and then honestly I got a little bored, so I didn't.
It happens. It happens.
I didn't finish it, but I was just kind of curious. But yeah, so let me hear from the creative that came up with this thing. And I guess the jury's. I guess I can say this live. Jury's out on whether I'm going to try to schedule the interview with her or not.
Oh, okay. I don't know that she'll say yes since you said she was boring.
Yeah, I might have to defend myself.
No, I'm sure you would also. And it says a lot about the interviewer. The interviewer must not have been captivating enough, and you are captivating.
Well, thank you. It's such a weird thing, and again, for people, the film was called Picture Day that Kate and I were talking about, the short film. And as we were talking pre-show, I wish I could tell you where you could watch this. I don't know if it's available on the director's website or not, but maybe eventually it'll be somewhere where the mass public can actually consume this film. Unfortunately, a lot of times with shorts, that's kind of what happens. They do the film festival circuit as much as they can, and then they kind of move on to the next project. And then people are like, "Well, I would like to see this." You know, Kate and Mark were just talking about it. Where do we go to see this? And I'm like, I don't know because I'm doing it as press. I can't just say go to YouTube over here or go to Vimeo or whatever.
I would say wait for a couple of years. Honestly, if they're still in Film Fest, this is Academy Award winning or not Academy Award qualifying. Give it a year or two, and then I bet it'll be somewhere public where people can see it, is my guess. Unless they get distribution, in which case you'll find it someplace else.
Okay, all right, there you go. And as we know, we are kind of coming down to the end of our first hour, first session, first
We did it.
live stream of conversations with Kate. And as I kind of mentioned to Kate, well, I don't know if I mentioned, I think I wrote about it. I would like to try to end this with anything that you would like to say. Could be words of wisdom, something you learned, something you want people to know about you, just kind of anything that maybe would be something to kind of part ways before we have the next episode next month.
Sure. I think that is a good idea. I sure did see you said that I should do that, and I sure planned nothing. But I guess I would refer people, I guess, to my website, kateblackspence.com. And I would also say Static Space, if you're interested. The short film is also available now on YouTube for free. And that's about it, I guess, right now. I've got a writer's retreat coming up, and so hopefully I'm going to hammer out this new script that I'm working on at this writer's retreat, and then we can talk about that next month.
Oh, awesome. No, that sounds exciting.
I'm excited.
All the things that Kate has done in her background, again, for me, I'm not someone that's been on stage, not even like in high school or something. So I don't have that piece. I only get to hear about it from other professionals and then try to put it into my bank up here when I'm looking at things and reviewing things. And I guess for myself, some things have kind of come my way, not related to the media outlet. And I would just kind of let people hopefully kind of think about that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I used to tell my students that I used to work with that were inner city students that were mixed up heavily with gangs and drugs and things of that nature. And I always have to talk to them about just because you can doesn't mean you should, because they might be in a position where they can take advantage of somebody else. And so I don't know how many times that's happened probably within the last couple of weeks for myself. Well, it's just like, why are you doing that? You don't have to do that. Again, just because you have this power or whatever you want to call it to do this to someone else or even to like another business, just don't do it. Just don't do it. I think the world would be a lot better place if people would just kind of realize, you know what, just stay in your lane and do your thing instead of trying to sit there and put it out over everybody else. Like you're up here and they're down here, and it just rubs me the wrong way. And thankfully, there are a lot of people who do subscribe to that and don't try to exert their power over everybody else. But
all it takes is a little empathy, I feel like. And I also think the best way to exercise empathy is to read books, watch movies, believe in other characters. It's a great tool to empathy. So go watch some movies. And also go vote, because that's about where we are, right? This is live. Go vote. We're getting awfully close.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Do something or get yourself involved with anything that's creative. If that means you're watching something, but try to figure out, why do you like something, or maybe that you don't like it? Why do you resonate with this character? A lot of times we're just watching what's presented to us and then you just kind of go on to the next thing. But if you take a few minutes, you kind of realize, well, I like this actress, or I like that actor, or I like the story. Not even just about genre, because I think that's too easy. It's more about like, here's something within genre. There might be a horror film that I love, and there's another one I can't stand. But why is that? What's going on with this one that I didn't like? And then, as Kate said, like, my voting stuff's right here, so I'll be dropping it off over at City Hall, which is 5 minutes from where I live this week.
Nice.
So, yeah, I just have to fill it out. I haven't blocked off enough time, but that's one of my things on my list for this week, is to make damn sure I vote well before Tuesday.
Yes, I voted yesterday. Feeling good. Got that off my to-do list.
There you go. And again, for everybody, just the act of doing it, that's what we're promoting, at least from my point of view, is that just vote, which way you're voting, just vote, exercise that right that you have as a citizen here in the U.S. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for the first inaugural conversations with Kate. And Kate,
Yeah,
it was wonderful talking with you. I'm so happy that I reached out to you. I reached out to the right person.
thank
This is
you. This was
the,
fun. Thank you so much.
yeah, this is what I wanted, and we'll talk, offline at some point about the next one for next month about where are we going with this, and just kind of go from there. But
Sounds
yeah,
great.
it was so awesome, and yeah, have a great retreat when you have that coming up,
Thank you.
and also Halloween if it's something you celebrate on Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah. My kid's gonna go as either Blippi, Daniel Tiger, or some musician that nobody knows. So I'm really looking forward to it.
It sounds like fun. Halloween was always my favorite holiday as a kid, and even as a young adult, I was definitely into Halloween.
As a
Um,
kid, yes. As an adult, I felt strongly you have to pay me to get me in a costume. I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do this. But I'm excited to do it with my kid now. It's been more fun.
there you go. Yeah, I would still dress up when I was teaching right out of college. So I was doing the makeup. I get up at 4 in the morning and do makeup on my face and wigs and all that stuff.
That is dedication.
Yeah, and then after a while, I worked one place where they didn't allow it. They didn't allow you to dress up unless it was like really basic kind of, I don't know, if you were in like a baseball uniform or something like that.
It's like a
Um,
Halloween Scrooge. I don't know what a
it,
Halloween Scrooge would be, but that sounds awful.
it was, and it really kind of deterred me. And then as I got older, I'm kind of like, I still love the holiday and I still love things around it, but yeah, I haven't been to like a dressed up party in years.
Same.
So,
Same.
all right, thanks, Kate, and thanks everybody, and we will see you next month.
Bye.